It is Wednesday, my dudes. Hey guys, my name is Gloria and welcome back to my channel and my weekday videos October celebration. Today I want to talk about books and writers that I think I should have read a long time ago. Their names I've heard so many times surrounding horror and darker fiction, and I just never picked them up. So I'm going to dive into two writers today that I should have read a long time ago. But there's no time like the present, and there's certainly no time like the year 2020 to do whatever the heck takes your fancy, so why not now? I will be doing one of these types of videos every Wednesday for the rest of October, so I'll be diving into other classic horror writers or big names in the horror genre that I definitely should have read by now. But today I want to specifically talk about Dean Koontz and Clive Barker. So I wanted to read two stories from each of these writers just to get a good sense of their writing style and the type of characters and the type of stories that they tell. I'd heard of Clive Barker because I knew about the movie Hellraiser and I knew about Pinhead and stuff, but I really didn't know anything about Dean Koontz other than he's sort of associated with Stephen King and he really likes dogs and he's got weird hair. But other than that, I couldn't name a Dean Koontz book. I just know the name and I've seen the name before, but I couldn't name a title of one of his books. While I was looking up books to read for Dean Koontz, I did come across Odd Thomas, and I think I'd heard of Odd Thomas before. It sounded really familiar, but I had no idea who Thomas was or what the story was about. But I did already have a collection of 3 of his books that I decided to read for this. I only read 2 of them, but I will read the 3rd at some point as well. And I thought a couple of these, whether they're his worst books, his best books, or just somewhere in the middle, would still give me a good sense of where he's at as a writer and whether I'd want to buy any more of his books in the future. Now, I did a while ago pick up one of his books at a swap table at work, but I don't know, I just wasn't in the right headspace, and it literally, the book started with semen raining from the sky, and I'm just not a huge fan of bodily fluids, and I just, you know, I put it back and I decided to read something that I was more likely to enjoy. But the 2 books of Dean Koontz that I did read are By the Light of the Moon and One Door Away from Heaven. So full disclosure, I'm still about halfway through One Door Away from Heaven. It's quite a long book, it's over 600 pages, and honestly I think he could have done it in 4. So it's been tough just kind of getting through it. I mean, no matter the length, I should have finished it about a week ago, but it's just work. It's a lot of work. But first up is By the Light of the Moon. This is a story that jumps right in with a man waking up tied to a chair in a hotel room that he's staying in with his heavily autistic brother. His brother is zoned in to a jigsaw puzzle that he's doing, but there's another man in the room, and it is a man who claims to be some sort of a doctor or a scientist, and he has just injected the guy tied to the chair with stuff. That's all he calls it, some random stuff. He tells him he's going to need to start running, it's going to do weird things to him, he doesn't know what it's going to do, but it's his life's work, and it's going to do something. And the man leaves, and he has to try and figure out what the hell to do with this. In the same motel complex there is a woman. She is a comedian with a pot plant companion, oddly enough, but she is on her way to do a gig, between gigs, and she also wakes up to this strange man injecting her with something. The crazy scientist disappears. The man and his brother and the woman meet outside and they decide to start running together, and their are quite quickly there are people looking for them, and they know that they need to get away, they need to hide, and they need to figure out who that guy was, what he did to them, and they start to see strange things, start to feel strange things, start to have abilities that they didn't have before, and it's clear that it's the stuff that has done this to them. And that's how the story goes. And I thought it was alright, I thought it was okay. I think the characters, their motivations and their actions weren't entirely believable. I mean, if I woke up and I had just been injected by a random man in a motel room, I don't think I would believe what he was telling me. But both of them are just 100% like, okay, crap, we need to run because there's people after us. But there was no questioning what this guy did. There was no questioning that they would develop some sort of telepathic abilities or whatnot. So it just seemed strange that they were totally into it from the beginning. The characters were all right, but I've from what I've read in both of these books, I think Dean Koontz's characters can sometimes be a little bit sickly sweet. They can be a little bit too goody-goody and too perfect, and it doesn't seem believable. It doesn't seem like real people in these crazy situations. That book was okay. I give it about 3 stars. His writing did sort of remind me at times a little bit of Stephen King, but without the grittiness and without the scares to it, which may not have been his intention in the first place. That's fine. So the one that I'm halfway through at the minute is called One Door Away from Heaven. It's very UFO alien based. There are 3 sort of plot narratives to follow. The first one is a guy called Noah, and he is an ex-cop. He is now a PI. He is watching a politician's house trying to get evidence that he's cheating on his wife. And while there, this guy's thugs come out and start beating the crap out of his car, and he is eventually offered a bribe not to give him any evidence to the wife, and he doesn't take it, which is obviously going to piss off the politician. The second is a child that is on the run from these horrible people who have murdered his family, and he stops in at another family's house to try and steal some money and some food so he can keep running, and the people come and kill that family, and the dog that was with that family becomes attached to him, and they both start running together and form this great bond where they can both trust each other, and he can trust the dog to lead him in the right direction. And the third narrative is with Michelena Belsong. That's her name, or Mickey, and she's living with her Aunt Jen in a trailer, and just recently a young girl and her mother and stepfather have moved in temporarily next door, and this young girl is called Leilani. She has disability. She can't use one of her hands, and she has a leg brace on her left leg, and she comes and she's very funny, she's very sassy, she tells wild stories, but they start to believe some of the stories that she's telling, that her mother is a drug addict and her stepfather is a murderer, and he murdered her brother, and her brother's missing now, and her mother is the least nurturing person to ever live. So I'm about halfway through the book, and honestly it's only just started to get interesting. So my issue with this book is that you get those 3 sort of narratives set up, and you're like, cool, these are going to go really interesting ways. You quickly forget about the PI because he doesn't come back for ages, and then you've forgotten who he is or what he's doing. The most interesting narrative is the young boy who's on the run, but you don't get a lot of information. You start to realize that something's a little bit odd, and the people who are after him are constantly going the right way. They're constantly doing 180s and following him again, so there's clearly they have a way of tracking him, but he's still always just constantly running, just going from one place to the next, to the next, to the next, and you're still not sure why they're following him, or why they killed his family, or why they're killing everyone else, or why the FBI is involved. With Mickey and her aunt and Leilani, it's just them sitting in the trailer having conversations, trying to figure out whether they should believe Leilani, trying to figure out what they can do to help her. And this goes on for, I'm guessing now, at least 300 pages. It's difficult to gauge because I'm reading it on a Kindle, so it doesn't give you page number. It's also the 3 books stuck together, so it's a whole mess. But at the minute, I've just found out some new things about the young boy, and that's interesting. But the other people, they're still just going along, and it's just really long paragraphs and pages of similes and metaphors and lists of things. Instead of just giving 1 or 2 comparisons, it's almost like he's trying to put down every comparison that he could possibly think of, and it's just really kind of boring. The young boy, Curtis, and the dog I quite like, but again, I love dogs and I don't want any dogs to die in any book or anything. I know that Dean Koontz also loves dogs. I think he's injecting them a little bit too much into this, and the dog is this saint-like character, and it feels a bit trite. And at times as well, instead of being with the characters, there's like these paragraphs that feel almost preachy about, you know, having hope and a god and a creator and stuff, and it just feels a bit preachy and off and not really fitting with the story. And I think my main issue with Dean Koontz is that I am always so aware when I'm reading his writing that he's there. The goal as a writer is to have your reader be completely immersed in the story and the characters and the events, and to forget that they're reading a book, and to forget that there was someone who orchestrated this entire story for you. And I'm always just really aware that he's there, and that he's putting these weird similes in and these really long paragraphs and stuff. And even at times it did remind me of in Friends, when Joey uses a thesaurus on a letter he's writing. I even think they did the same thing in the letter in Friends, and in this book, instead of just saying their heart stuttered, he's like their cardiovascular muscle stuttered, and that just threw me. It's very odd, and yeah, I don't think Dean Koontz is for me. I'm gonna finish this book, find out what's happening with Curtis and the dog. I will finish the other one just because I'm a stickler for finishing things, but I don't think I'll really be buying any books of his in the future unless someone gives me a recommendation that they really think I would like, and it sounds like a story that I would really like. I just don't think his writing is totally for me, unfortunately. You can tell me down below if you really like Dean Koontz, if you think there are books out there of his that I would really like. I would love to hear about them. Next up is Clive Barker, and I already knew about Clive Barker because of the movie. I bought this book actually because I recently watched the Hellraiser movie. I didn't really like the movie. I think it's been hyped up since before I was born, and I'd always known about Pinhead and the box, and I just expected there to be a lot more Pinhead. I expected him to be like the villain of the movie and to be popping up everywhere and abusing people, and he wasn't really there for very long. He was on screen for just a couple of moments, and he wasn't really a part of the story outside of their dimension. But I wanted to give the book a look, so I did buy this. It's really short, and the font is actually really big as well. So it's less than 200 pages. I included it in my short reads video yesterday. This is fantastic. Clive Barker's writing is so good. It is, I mean, it's scary good. But it's just, I love his writing. It's so engaging and it's so thrilling, and he's really one of those writers that you read the first page and you're like, I can relax, I can sit back, and this guy is going to tell me a great story. So if anyone doesn't know, I'm kind of assuming people do know, the story of the Hellbound Heart is a guy who is in search of more thrills than he could possibly get. So he's done all the kind of sexual things that you can possibly do, and he's bored with it, and he wants something else, something that most other people would never experience. And he finds this box. It's been sort of a mythical treasure, but he finds it, and it's called Le Marchand's box, and he manages to get it open, and it takes him to another dimension with strange humanoid creatures called the Cenobites. They promise to give him pleasures and delights and experiences he has never experienced before. So he goes to this other dimension, and then we're taken to his brother and his brother's wife moving into the family home. So this is where he was opening this box, but he's seemingly not there anymore, and they've decided to move in for a while. And it turns out that the wife had a one-night stand with this brother who's disappeared, and has been completely smitten with him ever since she got a taste of his sort of wilder, rougher side, and she's been thinking of him ever since. And she goes up to the room where he disappeared, and she catches a glimpse of him through a wall. He's trying to communicate with her from this other dimension. He manages to come through, but he is missing a lot of his body. He doesn't have any skin, or bone, or blood, and it's disgusting, but she still likes him, and he ropes her into getting victims for him, because if he feeds on other people, he can grow his body back pretty much. And she says, yeah, she is raring to get into bed with this guy again. She's gonna help him grow back his skin by murdering people. It is sort of, it's crazy and it's weird. It's definitely out there. I'm sure when it first came out people didn't know what to think of it, but it's good. It's well written. The characters are crazy, but you believe in their crazy, and it's gross. There's a lot of gore in it, and I really liked it. I really like Clive Barker's writing. I'm so glad that I read this and that I read the next book, because I think he's going to be one of my favorites. I definitely need to read more of him. The second book by Clive Barker that I read, I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I read The Thief of Always, which is a children's fable. And again, this is absolutely beautifully written, is so fantastic. I would have killed to have read this as a kid, but even now I think any horror fan, any spooky fan would love it. I think if you're looking for sort of a nostalgic feeling story, you want to read sort of a children's book for this October, this Halloween, you should definitely read The Thief of Always, because it is fantastic. So The Thief of Always tells the story of a young boy who is bored out of his mind. He's in his house, it's raining outside, and it's February. It's, you know, all the glitz and glamour of Christmas is gone. It's ages till summer. He doesn't know what to do, and a strange grinning man appears at his window and comes into his room, and as a young boy this is totally normal, and this thing invites him to go to a huge mansion, and he promises him all kinds of fun and delight and toys and games and all these cool things that he can do there. And the boy thinks, you know what, sure. So he goes to this mansion, and it is a beautiful mansion. It's a mansion where you can get anything you want. There's toys, there's food everywhere. It's brilliant, and the best parts of the year sort of happen all the time. So you get springtime, you get summer, you get Halloween every evening, and then you get Christmas at night, and it just rolls on, and he can stay there for as long as he wants. But they don't like him asking questions there, and he has a lot of questions to ask about this strange place, and he begins to realize that it's not as good as it seems, and he tries to leave and realizes that he is not allowed to leave, and he needs to figure out what is going on here, how he can get himself and the 2 other children who are there at that time out of there and back to their families. And that is the sort of story, the adventure that he has to go on, and it does get quite spooky, quite scary at times. It did a little bit remind me of Coraline, how she sees this everything she wants and it's great, but then it all kind of starts to crumble away and she can see the facade underneath. I really loved it. It was such a well-written story. I just want to read the first paragraph of this because I think it's just such a good way to really pull someone into a story and pull them into the mindset of the character and what's going on. It's short, but it works so well, it functions so well as a first paragraph for a story like this. The great grey beast February had eaten Harvey Swick alive. Here he was, buried in the belly of that smothering month, wondering if he would ever find his way out through the cold coils that lay between here and Easter. I just think that's fantastic. It personifies February. It makes it into this horrible monster that swallowed him up. It's sort of the way that kids think of things, and it's got those words, those creepy words that are telling you that it's gonna be a creepy story. And I think Clive Barker's awesome. Pretty much, I think his writing's awesome. It was also his birthday recently, so happy birthday to Clive Barker. I look forward to reading more of your stuff in the future. In particular, I recently learned of a movie or like an anthology series or something that's based on a short story collection of his called Bloodbound Books, and I would definitely like to read that one, and I'll watch it if I can get my hands on it as well. So that is my classics sort of reading video for today. I'll have more up. Next week I'm doing Ray Bradbury and Sheridan Le Fanu, so I get to dive into those writers. On Friday of this week I will have another original story up that I've written myself. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope you enjoyed the video. You can like and subscribe down below if you like what I'm doing here. I really appreciate it, and I shall see you in the next video.